Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today, we're going underground. Well, kinda. We're going to be looking at cellar spiders,
Ooh.
those long-legged, kind of creepy crawlies that you often see in the corners of your basement.
Yeah, you always get the heebie-jeebies a little bit when you see one.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to be looking at a blog post from a California pest control company.
Oh, okay.
Now, you wouldn't really expect a pest control company to be,
Singing their praises.
yeah, singing the praises of these spiders. But that's what makes this so interesting because there's some really surprising insights in here.
Really?
And it turns out that these little guys might not be the villains we always make them out to be.
Interesting.
So get ready for some really cool spider facts.
I'm ready.
Awesome. So what really struck me about this blog post is that they really flipped the script on how we usually think about spiders.
Yeah.
We always think of them as pests, something to get rid of. But this blog post actually talks about how cellar spiders can be valuable in keeping other less desirable insects in check.
Yeah, it's a really unique perspective, especially coming from a pest control company.
Totally. I was expecting tips on how to exterminate them, not a lesson in ecological balance.
Right.
But it was really cool to see their perspective on it.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the basics here. Like, what exactly is a cellar spider? What makes them different from all the other spiders?
Yeah, so, they definitely have a very distinct look.
Oh, yeah?
Imagine like a tiny little body, often less than like 0.4 inches.
Wow, that's tiny.
I know, super tiny, but then they have these incredibly long and delicate legs that just seem to go on forever.
That's most comical.
It is totally comical.
Yeah.
And in fact, because of that, they're often mistaken for harvestmen, which are those other daddy long legs that aren't actually spiders at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's another thing that the blog post addresses is, the whole confusion surrounding daddy long legs
Right.
and the myth that they're the most venomous spiders, but their fangs are too small to bite us.
Oh, yeah. I remember being told that as a kid and being like, oh, my gosh, they're all over my basement. I'm going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Such a persistent myth.
Yeah.
But it's completely untrue.
Right.
True cellar spiders, they do have venom, like most spiders, but it's designed to subdue their tiny prey, not to harm humans at all.
Right.
And their bites are incredibly rare. And if they do happen, it's more like a mild prick.
Oh.
Nothing dangerous whatsoever.
Not like the Black Widow or anything like that.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know.
And the blog post even goes on to clarify that there's actually two main types of cellar spiders that are found in the U.S.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the long-bodied cellar spider, which has like a peanut-shaped abdomen,
Okay.
and then the short-bodied cellar spider, which has a more rounded abdomen.
Interesting. So where are we most likely to find these guys?
Well,
Obviously, they're called cellar spiders.
exactly. They
So
like
yeah,
it.
it's in the cellar.
They like it dark, damp, and undisturbed.
Okay.
So think basements, attics, crawl spaces, even under sinks or behind furniture. Basically, any spot that provides like a peaceful retreat
Okay.
and a decent supply of their favorite snacks.
And what are their favorite snacks? I'm guessing not crumbs that I drop on the floor.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Cellar spiders are actually really skilled predators.
Okay.
They feast on a variety of insects, and this is where things get kind of interesting
Okay.
because they don't just target like those small, annoying flies and mosquitoes.
Okay.
Their diet also includes moths, other spiders, and even some species that are considered household pests, like the blog post specifically mentions hobo spiders, which are known for their painful bites, and cellar spiders actually help control their population.
So they're like little pest control agents.
Exactly. They're working behind the scenes.
Wow. Okay. I'm starting to see why the pest control company is giving them some love here.
Right.
Okay, but let's talk about their webs because their webs always look so messy and chaotic
Yeah.
compared to like the beautiful symmetrical webs that I see out in my garden.
Right.
What's the deal with that?
Well, those seemingly haphazard webs actually serve a dual purpose.
Okay.
First, they're really effective traps for unsuspecting prey.
Right.
And second, they actually play a role in the spider's defense mechanism.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when a cellar spider feels threatened, it vibrates rapidly in its web.
Wow.
And that creates this kind of blurry effect that confuses predators.
So it's like camouflage.
Exactly. And it makes them look larger and more intimidating.
So it's camouflage in like a little spider disco.
Exactly. It's like a built-in security system.
I love that.
I know. It's pretty cool.
So they're more clever than I gave them credit for.
They are.
Okay, so speaking of being clever, how do these spiders even get into our homes in the first place? I rarely see them out in the open.
Well, they're like masters of stealth.
Yeah.
They can slip through cracks, crevices, any opening they can find.
Oh, gosh.
Vents, loose window screens, even gaps under doors can provide entry points.
Ugh, I hate to think about that.
And once they're inside, they seek out those quiet, undisturbed areas that we were talking about earlier, set up shop, and start their families.
Their families.
Yeah.
Tell me more about their life cycle. How do they go from little baby spiders to these web-spinning ninjas?
Yeah, so it all starts with the female cellar spider. After mating, she lays her eggs in this little silken sac,
Okay.
which she carries around with her for protection.
Oh, wow. So it's like a mobile nursery.
Exactly.
Oh.
And then once the spiderlings hatch, they remain in that sac for a while before venturing out to explore the world and eventually create webs of their own.
So it's like a little spider daycare.
Basically.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about how they look, what they eat, those amazing webs, their little family life.
Yeah.
Let's get back to like the source material here, this pest control company.
Right.
Because I'm really curious to know what they recommend in terms of managing, or should I say coexisting with these helpful housemates.
Well, it might surprise you, but their approach actually leans more towards prevention and removal rather than complete eradication.
So then I just like kill them all, get them out of here.
Not really.
Interesting. That's not what I was expecting.
I know, right? But it kind of makes sense when you think about the ecological benefits that they were talking about.
Right.
So their advice centers around making your home less appealing to cellar spiders in the first place.
Okay, so like spring cleaning on steroids?
Exactly, like a deep, clean decluttering, sealing up any cracks and crevices.
Okay, so that's a lot of work.
It is, but,
Less stuff, less spiders.
exactly. And remember, moisture control is key, too.
Oh, right.
Because they love those damp environments.
Right.
So using dehumidifiers, especially in basements and crawl spaces, can make a big difference.
So making the environment less hospitable, not necessarily evicting them.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Awesome. Okay, so it's all about kind of sealing up the cracks, making sure it's not too humid for them.
Right.
What about those situations where things have gotten a little bit out of control? Like I'm thinking about the time my aunt had like a massive cellar spider infestation in her basement.
Oh,
It
God.
was like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah, that's where things get a little trickier.
Yeah.
The pest control company does suggest calling in professionals for those really severe infestations
Okay.
because they have access to, like, stronger insecticides and methods for dealing with the larger populations.
So there's a limit to this live and let live philosophy.
Oh, it's more about finding that balance,
Right.
Even when professional intervention is necessary, their focus seems to be on targeted treatments rather than just like spraying everywhere.
Right.
It's about minimizing the impact on the environment and other non-target species.
Okay, so kind of weighing the pros and cons a little bit.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us back to the core question this whole deep dive has been exploring is getting rid of cellar spiders always the best solution?
Yeah. Especially when they're kind of doing us a favor by keeping other more troublesome pests under control.
It's definitely a complex issue
Yeah,
with no easy answers.
for sure.
But it really forces us to kind of confront those preconceived notions about spiders and the role they play in our lives.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because a lot of the times our fear of spiders, it's really based on misinformation and cultural conditioning.
Totally.
We just see a spider and we immediately react with disgust or fear.
Right.
But maybe we need to like pause for a second and actually consider the facts.
Totally. I think this whole deep dive has definitely challenged my own assumptions.
Yeah, mine too.
Cellar spiders might not win any beauty contests,
No.
but they're fascinating creatures with a really unique role to play in our homes.
And maybe just maybe a little less deserving of our, immediate aversion.
Right. It's all about perspective.
Exactly. We often focus on the potential harm without even considering the potential benefits.
Absolutely. And what I find so interesting here is that this pest control company,
Right.
a company that literally profits from eliminating pests,
Right.
is advocating for this more nuanced approach.
Yeah.
They're acknowledging the ecological value of these often maligned creatures.
That says a lot. It's like they're saying, hey, we're in the business of getting rid of pests, but even we recognize that not all creatures labeled as pests are created equal.
Exactly. It's a reminder that the natural world is just complex
Yeah.
and interconnected. Every creature has a role to play,
Right.
and sometimes those roles benefit us even if we don't immediately recognize it.
That's such a humbling thought because we often think we're at the top of the food chain.
Right.
But in reality, we're just a part of this really delicate web of life,
Totally.
interconnected with creatures that we might not always appreciate.
Yeah, and those connections, even the ones that make us squirm a little bit,
Yeah.
they're essential for a healthy ecosystem even within the confines of our own homes.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, what's like the one thing you hope our listener will take away from this?
I hope they're considering the possibility of, you know, coexisting a little more peacefully with cellar spiders. Maybe the next time they encounter one spinning its messy web in a dark corner, they'll pause and observe instead of reaching for the insecticide.
I love that. Instead of fear, a sense of curiosity. It's a
Exactly.
real shift in perspective, and I think that's what this whole deep dive is encouraging us to do.
Totally. It's about recognizing the beauty and the complexity of the natural world,
Yeah.
even in those creatures that we often perceive as creepy or unwanted.
And maybe even appreciating the role that they play in keeping our homes in balance, right?
Absolutely. Remember those two types of cellar spiders that we talked about earlier, the long-bodied and the short-bodied?
Yeah?
They both contribute to that balance. They feast on a variety of insects that might otherwise become a real nuisance.
That's so true.
Ugh.
It's funny how we often reach for those chemical solutions when nature has already provided its own form of pest control
I know.
right there in our basements and attics.
Right. It's a reminder that we're not separate from nature.
Yeah.
Even in our modern homes,
Yeah.
we're part of this intricate ecosystem.
Yeah.
And understanding those connections can help us make, more informed choices.
Choices that benefit both us and the environment.
Exactly.
So I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about cellar spiders, at least according to our pest control company source.
Yeah, I think so. We've explored their unique characteristics from those comically long legs
Yeah.
to those messy yet effective webs.
We've debunked the myth
Did
about
I?
their deadly venom and discovered that they're actually quite beneficial
Right.
when it comes to keeping other pest populations in check.
Totally. And perhaps most importantly,
Yeah.
we've kind of challenged ourselves to rethink our relationship with these often misunderstood creatures,
Yeah.
considering, the possibility of coexistence rather than automatic eradication.
It's been a fascinating journey, I think,
It has.
full of really surprising insights and thought-provoking questions.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's like the one thing you want our listener to remember?
I hope they'll remember that even the smallest, most overlooked creatures can have a significant impact on our lives and our homes.
And that sometimes the best solution isn't about eliminating what we perceive as pests,
Right.
but about understanding and appreciating that really intricate web of life that connects us all.
Beautifully said.
And on that note, I think it's time to bid farewell to our eight-legged friends, at least for now.
Until next time.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, there's always more to discover, even in the darkest corners of our world.
So true.
And hey, if you happen to spot a cellar spider spinning its web in your basement, maybe give it a little nod of respect. It might just be doing you a favor.
It might be. Yeah, it really does make you think differently about things, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
They acknowledge the need for pest control, but they really emphasize a more thoughtful approach. It's
Right.
not just about, eliminating everything that we think is creepy.
Right, it's about understanding, like, the bigger picture,
Totally.
how everything's connected.
Yeah, and that cellar spiders might not be the prettiest things in the world, but they actually have a really important role to play.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's say we're on board with this whole coexistence idea.
Okay.
What are some practical things we can do to manage these populations without resorting to, like, really harsh measures?
Well, I mean, we touched on a few of them already, like reducing clutter is a really big one.
Oh, yeah.
All those boxes, old furniture, all that stuff we tend to store in our basements and attics.
Like my entire childhood.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
a five-star hotel for cellar spiders.
So basically, a good decluttering session is good for everybody.
It is less stuff for us to worry about and fewer spider havens.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then we talked about moisture control.
Right, because they love those damp spaces. So
Yeah.
using dehumidifiers, especially in those areas, can make a big difference.
Yeah. So basically, we're just making the environment a little less hospitable.
Exactly, not necessarily evicting them.
Okay, I can get behind that. But what about those situations where things have gotten a little out of hand? Like, I'm thinking about that time when my aunt had that, like, massive cellar spider colony in her basement.
Oh, no.
It was like a horror movie.
That's definitely where things get a bit more tricky.
Yeah.
The pest control company does suggest calling in professionals for those really severe cases
Okay.
because they have access to stronger insecticides and different methods for managing those larger populations.
So there is a limit to this whole live and let live thing.
Well, it's more about finding that balance.
Right.
Even when professional help is needed, the focus is still on those targeted treatments,
Okay.
not just spraying indiscriminately.
Gotcha.
It's about minimizing the impact on the environment and other species.
Right, and especially considering all the good that these cellar spiders are doing by
Exactly.
keeping those other pests away. So it really is about weighing the pros and cons.
It is, and it brings us back to that core question that we've been kind of circling around this whole time.
Yeah.
Is getting rid of cellar spiders always the best solution?
Right, because in some cases, they're actually helping us out.
Exactly. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's not black and white.
It's not, and it really makes us think about those assumptions that we have about spiders in general.
Yeah, it's so true. Our fear of spiders, it's often based on, misinformation,
Totally.
things we've heard, things we've been told.
And cultural conditioning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We see a spider and we immediately freak out.
Yeah.
But maybe we need to just take a breath and look at the facts.
I completely agree. This deep dive has really made me rethink a lot of my own assumptions.
Me too.
Cellar spiders might not be cute and cuddly,
No.
but they're super interesting and they have an important job to do.
Yeah. And maybe we should give them a little bit more respect.
Right. It's all about perspective.
It is. And I think we tend to focus on the negative, like the potential harm,
Yeah,
without even considering the potential benefits.
absolutely. And the fact that a pest control company
Like,
is
oh.
advocating for this more nuanced approach.
It's crazy.
I know, it's like they're saying, hey, we get rid of pests, but even we recognize that not all pests are created equal.
Exactly. It's such a good reminder that nature is complex
Yeah,
and that everything is interconnected.
totally.
Every creature has a role to play.
And those roles, sometimes, even though we don't realize that those roles actually benefit us.
Yeah, it's pretty humbling when you think about it.
It is.
We think we're at the top of the food chain, but
Yeah.
really we're just part of this giant web
Exactly.
connected to all these creatures, even the ones that we don't necessarily like.
Yeah, but those connections are so important
Yeah.
for a healthy ecosystem.
Right, even in our own homes.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, what's like the one thing you really hope our listeners are thinking about?
I hope they're considering the possibility of coexisting with these spiders. Next time they see one in the corner, maybe instead of reaching for the bug spray, they just kind of take a moment to observe it.
I love that. Yeah, just taking a moment to appreciate them for what they are.
Yes. Instead of just freaking out. Right. Yeah. And I think that's what this whole deep dive has been about.
It is like shifting our perspective a little bit.
Right.
And realizing that, even these creatures that we might find a little creepy,
Yeah.
they actually have a lot to offer.
And they're helping us out in ways that we might not even realize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about those two different types of cellar spiders, the long-bodied and the short-bodied ones.
Yeah.
They're both playing a role in keeping our homes in balance.
Right. They're eating all those other bugs that we don't want around.
Exactly. And it's funny because we often reach for the sprays and the traps and all that stuff
Right.
when nature has already provided us with a solution.
It's right there in our basements.
Exactly.
It's pretty cool. It's a good reminder that we're not really separate from nature,
We're not.
even when we're inside our homes.
Even in our nice climate-controlled environments.
Right, exactly. We're still part of this ecosystem.
Oh, and I think understanding that can help us make better choices.
Absolutely.
Choices that are good for us and for the environment.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we've covered pretty much everything there is to know about cellar spiders, at least for now.
Yeah, I think so. We've talked about their looks, their webs.
Their venom or lack thereof.
Right, which is very important to remember. And we've talked about how they can actually be beneficial.
Yeah, we even get some tips on how to manage them if they get a little too out of hand.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think most importantly, we've really challenged ourselves to rethink how we see these creatures.
Yeah, I think that's key.
Instead of just automatically assuming they're bad.
Exactly.
Maybe we can try to coexist with them peacefully.
I think that's a great goal.
Yeah, I think so too. It's been a really interesting deep dive.
It has been.
Full of surprises for me.
Yeah, me too.
So as we wrap things up here, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from all of this?
I hope they'll remember that even the tiniest creatures,
Yeah.
the ones we often overlook, can have a huge impact on our lives.
Absolutely. And that sometimes the best approach isn't about getting rid of things,
Right.
but about understanding them and
Yeah.
appreciating that interconnectedness of everything.
Beautifully said.
All right, well, on that note, I think it's time to say goodbye to our eight-legged friends.
Farewell, little spiders.
Until next time, everyone keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, there's always more to discover, even in those dark corners of our world.
And hey, if you see a cellar spider hanging out in your basement, maybe give it a little nod. It might just be doing you a favor.
For sure.